Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. Welcome to Propaganda of Toxic Feminism, the series in which I expose and debunk falsehoods, misconceptions and outright lies spread about the men's rights movement. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, so let's start with something I came across by accident on a blog called Handbag Mafia. Interesting name. Anyway, the entry was called Mad Max, Feminism and Fury, and once again makes the claim that MRAs are boycotting Mad Max Fury Road. This article is a few months old, so it came out when all that controversy was flying around the internet. So I left a quick comment just saying Aaron Clarey is not a men's rights activist and Return of Kings is a pickup artist site, not an MRA site. Just thought you might like some facts. And Handbag Mafia replied about 3 hours later. She says, I actually acknowledged that he says he's not an MRA, and I didn't say Return of Kings was an MRA site either. Fair enough. Well, if that's the case though, then why is it she starts out her article with,
apparently, a bunch of men's rights activists and their supporters have their man knickers in a knot over the latest action movie to hit the cinemas, Mad Max Fury Road.
So I thought I'd leave another comment asking if she's aware that Cleary isn't a MRA and she knows that Return of Kings is not a MRA site, then who are these MRAs who have their man knickers in a knot and are boycotting Mad Max? Unfortunately, I couldn't leave that comment because, you see, immediately after replying to my message, she closed comments to the thread. I'm sure that's just a coincidence though, and has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that she realised she fucked up. Next. So you may remember a few months back now I featured an article from so-called fitness guru James Fell, in which basically he wrote nothing but an article filled with ad homs targeted at the men's rights movement, with nothing that really could be considered factual evidence or any kind of actual argument. Well, it seems he's at it again, this time with an article called The Worst Thing About Men's Rights Activism. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire article bit by bit. Vindicator has already done a fantastic job of that, so I'll link to his video below. If you want to see someone go through and tear it apart line by line, feel free to click on his video. But I will highlight a couple of key segments which I think should be pointed out. So first off, he starts by recommending what he considers to be the best takedown of the men's rights movement, which is an article on cracked.com. Yeah, I think I pulled this article apart way back in Propaganda of Toxic Feminism. Was it 5 or 6 maybe? I can't remember, but it was over a year ago. And basically the author gets in a former white supremacist and Michael Kimmel, who is even more irrational than a white supremacist, a former white supremacist, and asks their opinion about the men's rights movement. Yeah, as opposed to actually speaking to members of the men's rights movement. Why not ask a former white supremacist and a fanatical, radical male feminist mangina? Makes perfect sense, right? So yeah, the article is of course full of inaccuracies and ad homs and all the other bullshit that you would expect from an article on Cracked, which interviews a white supremacist and Michael Kimmel. Like I said, I've already taken this one apart, so I'm not going to go through it again, but I just find it interesting that's what he considers the best takedown of the men's rights movement, which I think speaks volumes, not only for our critics in general, but most definitely of Mr. James Fell. But the one thing I do find interesting and wanted to point out about this new James Fell article is this particular paragraph.
I, Sargent, and many others have endeavored to expose the toxic slew of misogyny that is MRA, and we've done a good job. MRAs are widely recognized as women-hating losers who don't actually care about the causes they profess to rally around. We've done the job well enough that a new trend seems to be popping up where guys walk, talk and quack like MRAs, but proclaim that they're not MRA because the movement has received the public tarnishing it deserves. The horrible return of King's Sight being but one example. Want to rapidly become a pariah? Proclaim to be MRA.
So he claims that people like himself and Sargent from Cracked have done such a good job exposing us that MRAs are now no longer using the MRA title. And he gives the perfect example of Return of Kings. Of course, Rush V and Return of Kings were clearly stating that they weren't MRAs long before the Cracked article ever came out or James Fell ever started writing articles about us. And do you know why Return of Kings and Rush V were claiming that they weren't MRAs? Because they're not fucking MRAs, that's why. And unfortunately James Fell, who is not the most intelligent of people, let's face it, all you have to do is read one of his articles to see that this guy is by no means a genius. He obviously can't tell the difference between the manosphere and a men's rights activist. And to be honest, I don't think he really cares, because it's all propaganda, right? If he can use someone who isn't an MRA as the perfect example of an MRA and promote a little bit of propaganda, why not? Right, James? But I think the fact that he's been called out on it so many times has now led him to this claim that MRAs are just abandoning the title and because noble white knights like James Fell have shone the spotlight on the evil misogyny. And how exactly has James Fell done that? Well, by calling us women-hating losers and crybabies. Apparently that's shining a spotlight on us. So, yeah. Well done, James. Well done. Fantastic job, mate. Fantastic. But he does go on to say that because he's exposed us so well, that he's actually created a problem. Let me read you another paragraph.
Unfortunately, because problems that men face have become associated with MRA, when someone is legitimately concerned about these troubles it is difficult to discuss publicly because the dark cloud of MRA hangs over it. A lot of people view it as misogynistic, what about the men, kind of thinking. As an example, last summer I had an article published about male eating disorders. It received a lot of praise from men and women alike. But at the same time there was a sizable voice of, women have it worse. Yes, they do, but there is no such thing as the Suffering Olympics.
And a little bit further into the article it says,
but some think suffering is a competitive event, because when I posted the bigorexia piece there were negative comments that this wasn't something we should cry about, and that we needed to call the ambulance, because women suffered from this more than men do. I guess those people didn't notice that I've written numerous times about the eating disorder promoting and body-shaming culture that is specifically targeted at women, because I share one article about how some men face similar problems and it gets cut down.
Now I find the irony here extremely funny, considering last year James Fell wrote an article for Time magazine in which he said,
Imagine a kid who got a cone with 3 scoops of ice cream in it. Good flavors, too, like peanut butter chocolate, plus a scoop of cookie dough in a waffle cone. And then this child whines about the lack of chocolate sprinkles on top. Welcome to the men's rights movement.
Yes, that's right, James. Caring about bodily integrity and male suicide, male homelessness, parental rights, and getting a fair sentence, an equal sentence to what women get in criminal cases. Apparently all that is just wanting sprinkles on top of your ice cream. Of course it is, James. But I find this exceptionally funny that James is now being subjected to the same feminist bigotry that he has subjected us to in the past. But James, being of either limited intelligence or a completely dishonest asshole, has decided to blame us for it. Of course, it's our fault, isn't it, James? The fact that society doesn't take men's issues seriously, and has never taken men's issues seriously, that's our fault. Even though feminism has clearly had the loudest voice for at least the last 40 years, and has influence in the media and in education and in the government, and has done literally nothing for the rights of men, that's somehow our fault, even though realistically we're only a new grassroots movement. Yeah. Makes perfect sense, James. Next. So I know that more than a few of you out there identify as humanists. Well, this one's going to piss you guys off. The article is titled,
Sounds nothing like humanism, MRAs and mass shootings.
I see it's going to piss me off too. Anyway, let's get stuck into it.
American Humanist Association President Rebecca Hale has a catchy saying to succinctly explain humanism to people who may be sympathetic to the life stance but have never heard the term. When a famous intellectual or celebrity makes a comment about the moral imperative for treating people justly and equitably, Hale quips, sounds like humanism. As a philosophical tradition, humanism spans centuries of thinking about our shared humanity and how we can derive our morality from reason and empathy without the supernatural. Part of humanism's moral imperative is to recognize inequality, whether based on economic class, gender, race or sexual orientation or identity, and work to create a society that ends injustice. But that's a mouthful to say, so the phrase, sounds like humanism, is a witty way to identify humanist ethics in everyday life. The American Humanist Association even built a successful Facebook campaign around it.
Okay, so far so good. I actually agree with all of this, but I suspect we're going to be encouraged to drink the Kool-Aid any second now. Next.